Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking sealed wheel bearings, how to remove them, tips, tricks, everything, as well as trying out my new chesty mount that my son got me. So stay tuned, let's get into it.
I wanna taste the pain. I think I'm seeing all red. 2 bullets in the gun, 1 shot to the head. I need a blank space. 'Cause everything is a threat, but I never back down, man. I'd rather be dead. I'm making love to fame. And she look better in bed. And I'ma walk this life till I take my last breath. I wanna make a change. I got 1 life left, so I'm gonna go down swinging. Don't you forget.
All right guys, what I mean by sealed bearings are bearings that are non-serviceable, meaning when it goes bad, you replace the entire thing. It's a hub, it's assembly, it comes with the studs, it comes with everything here, not the rotor or anything, but it's in here and it gets bolted in through the back of the spindle. And a lot of times they don't come out that easy. So we're gonna walk you through the steps of what's involved in changing this thing. So this 2014 Nissan Titan, it'll be detailed for that one. However, and it's 4-wheel drive, this same theory works on most all sealed bearings, and there's a lot of videos out there. I found lighting, some of the context of them weren't that great, so I'm gonna try to do one that shows a little bit of everything and it's not super drawn out. So I'll show you what's involved. This truck came in for an oil undercoating, and we always give the front end a shakedown. Well, I did that, and it had a bad right front wheel bearing. So literally shouldn't be any play at all in these sealed, non-serviceable bearings. So when you grab the wheel, it was like clunk, 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 clunk. Pretty noticeable. I've already got the wheel off, so yeah, I'm not putting it back on, but regardless, it's noticeable. You grab the wheel, you can grab it at the bottom, and you shake it in and out. Dunk, dunk, you feel it moving. So that's always a telltale sign. The other one is nice and tight. There's no movement at all in it. So we're going to get this one replaced for the customer while he's in here getting the oil undercoating done. All right, step 1 is to get the wheel off. We've already done that. Another thing you can do, especially if you're going to do this like the job the next day, is to soak everything like around the studs, around where the rotor is, and on the back side in between the dust plate here, is to soak everything penetrating oil. It'll help things come apart. This truck's in pretty good shape, so hopefully it's not too bad, but these things never come out easy. The rotor on this one, I can tell you, is free because this thing had front brakes done not too long ago. So that'll be one step that's a little easier for us. But basically, you take off the center nut to your CV shaft. We're going to give this thing a tap to slide it back into the bearing, making sure that it's not stuck in the bearing, because that can happen as well. We're going to go ahead and remove the caliper right at the bracket. That's these 2 bolts right here. There's one on the top and there's one on the bottom. 2 bolts. These happen to be, I believe, on the Nissan Titan, they're 18mm. So these are going to come out. We're going to wire this caliper up out of the way, so you're not letting it hang onto the brake hose, because that's not good. And then we're going to go ahead and get to the back of the bearing assembly itself. There's a bolt there. There's one on the other side, and there's one on the top. There's 3, and I believe these are 17mm bolts. I could be wrong. I'm just guessing at this point. Now, this is where it gets tricky, and they don't always want to come out. So there's different ways you can get these things out, and I'm going to get into those as well. So to start with, let me get the center nut off. We'll give that thing a tap, make sure she's going to come out. Then we'll go for the brake caliper. And I'm going to set this mount up on me, and hopefully it gets the right angle, because I feel like it's going to. I got my mount on. It's not very becoming, is it? It's what it feels like to wear a bra, ladies. Man, that's not comfortable. All right, I got the chest mount on, so hopefully you all can see. But basically what I'm going to do is take out the cotter pin. There's typically a cotter pin on the end of these shafts to just prevent any type of like bolt backing out or loosening up. I've personally never seen it, but it is possible and it could happen. So now I'm going to size this. I'll get the size for you. Again, different applications may be a little bit different, but in a nutshell, this is what I go after first. All right, that's an 1.25 inch socket. It actually fits really well. There's probably a metric equivalent to that, 36 mil. Don't quote me to that, but anyway, I don't know if this gun will take it off because it's a battery gun, but we'll try it. So no, let's get the air gun. All right, we'll get the old air cat out. Could you do this by hand? Probably. If the vehicle was on the ground, you went through the center of the wheel without pneumatic tools. Yes. but man, that would suck. So let's try this one. And see how I'm pushing that shaft right now? That's great, which means the shaft in the hub assembly, the wheel bearing hub assembly, is loose. So we know that's not gonna hold it. So I don't have to tap that. However, if you did, and it did not, and the shaft was stuck, this is a good time to try it. You can, couple of things. So see how I'm flushing the nut to the end of the shaft? You can go ahead and flush it and smack that with a, like a 3-pound sledge or something a few times. Be careful not to mar the threads. You can also take an air impact hammer and air impact the very end of this with a blunt air impact hammer. Or you could have your socket on there and smack that if you got a socket you don't care too much about. That's usually not the bigger problem. The bigger problem is the outside of the hub sticking into the spindle itself. So now that we know that's loose and that nut's going to come off, I'm going to grab the 18 millimeter socket and ratchet and get this caliper and bracket assembly off and get it wired out of the way. All right, so we got the nut off. We've got our mechanics wire. So always get this up and set up ready. You could use zip ties, rope, whatever, but just get something strong enough that's gonna hold the weight of the caliper out of the way. We can't swing it very far because it actually has a secondary hose bracket that I don't wanna take off. So I got the 18 millimeter nuts, bolts, sorry, 2 of these, one on the top, one on the bottom, both of those cracked loose. I'm gonna finish taking them out. You may have to get in here and pry the pads a little bit if the rotors got a little bit of a ridge on them to open up the pistons. This I think will be fine. I think the caliper is going to slide right off. So this is loosened up, and this is actually sliding off because, well, the brakes were done, like I said, not long ago. So in order to keep the strain off from the brake hose, now we've gone ahead and we're tying the caliper up and out of the way with some mechanics wire. Again, you could use zip ties. Probably not the most reliable thing unless they're super rugged. But I find mechanics wire, you can get it tied up with this, works pretty well. As you can see me struggle with the mechanics wire. But anyway, this is out of the way now, so you don't have to worry about that. The rotor on this one is coming right off. If it doesn't come off, you may have to take a couple whacks at it from the back here. Don't smash the braking surface. You can get at it just on the inside on the back, or smack it on the flats here with the hammer. Usually the shocking will work, and again with a little bit of penetrating oil, that'll help too. So the rotor's out of the way. Now this is the wheel bearing / hub assembly. And actually, you can still move it. You can actually feel the play in this thing without the wheel even on it. So she's due. But basically what happens is this dust shield's clamped in between here, and you can kind of see, let me get my flashlight. You can kind of see the ends of the bolts on the hub. This one has 3. I'm going to go ahead and spray those 2 and get those penetrating. I did the back seam here. We're going to crack those all loose, and I'll show you a couple methods. Now, many of these, including this one, come with an ABS sensor built right in, or the wire. I believe the one, Steve's picking it up right now, ours is going to come with a new ABS sensor. On this model, on the Titans, it plugs in right here, and you just take it out of the grommets, and boom, you replace it as an assembly with the new ABS sensor on it. I'm pretty sure ours will have that. If not, you got to get this out, and that never goes well. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So I'm going to go ahead and get a 17 millimeter for the bolts for the back of this hub assembly and spray these down. All right, the bolts on the back are actually 18, not 19 on the Titan, just so you know. I don't want to confuse people on that. Let me set my music off so we don't get a copyright claim. But basically, on the back of this, I'll give you back here so you can kind of see. Back here is you have the bolt, and there's enough to get your ratchet on there in all 3 positions on this truck. So hopefully you can see that with my chesty. I'm trying to look. So we're going to go ahead and crack these loose. I'm just going to loosen all 3 a little bit, because what's going to happen is if we have to, and this don't just come out, which I'm certain it won't, we're going to end up with an air hammer back here. So that's another thing you can use to go ahead and help you get these things out. You may have to turn the wheel, but trust me, it works really well, because in theory, this should just come right out. I can tell you from experience, that doesn't happen. All right, I don't know if you can see that, but the actual head of that bolt is moving. So I'm loosening it on the other side, and you can see it turning. So I'm going ahead and back these things out until they're just flush. Then we'll go to the next step. They're all loose, so now you just grab it and pull it off. No, that's definitely not. It just doesn't work that way. So now you got a couple of things you can do. If you have a slide hammer, and I'll get ours out, let me set it up. It's probably not the way that we'll end up using, but let's try it. It mounts to the flange here, and you just pull it this way. If you have that, I think tool stores, you can borrow that as well. If not, we're gonna get on the back of those bolt heads and air hammer those. That usually works every time. The other thing you can do, I guess if you're in desperate measures, is you put a chisel between the actual spindle and the HUD flange itself, and that you're gonna damage this disc a little bit, the brake dust disc, but it does work as well. But let's try the easiest method first and see if that works, then we'll go down the line. All right, so we got our slide hammer on. As you can see, it doesn't fit right. It all depends on your bolt circle and your bolt pattern, but it's on there enough to kind of show you basically what happens is, so on a slide hammer, you're just sliding this back and forth like this to try to loosen it off the flange here. So I'll give it a couple whacks and see if it loosens.
She's breathing him. I saw some movement.
Yeah. I was afraid that probably wouldn't work good, but I'll give it a couple more whacks and then I'll show you the air hammer method because that always works.
You're doing that. I could see it. I don't know.
She's still tight though.
Move. Yeah.
Whew. That's one method. All right, so I actually got Steve in the truck now. So he turned the he turned the wheel all the way one way so I can get on the back of these two with an air hammer and just kind of give him a blast, and then he's going to turn the wheel the other way. So this is when it's nice when you have another person. And then we'll blast the head of the bolt from the other one. Where did I put my air hammer? I wanted to show you that. Oh, right here. So they make different styles here. Some have the tip that you put a socket on, which I don't have, but I need to get. This is just a blunt tip, so I go ahead and put it on the head. And you can do it carefully without destroying the head of the bolt itself. So I'm gonna get back here. I'm gonna get I won't show you on this one because the caliper is kind of hanging in the way and it makes it a little difficult. But the other side, I'll show you that one. All right, now I can show you. So hopefully you all can see that. Again, first time using the chesty mount. This blunt tip fits nice right in the head of the bolt. And you just go ahead with the air hammer, push on that and give it a blast. And if you know if it's working, because it hasn't moved much, but that plate is starting to get a little bit loose. So now I'm gonna have him turn the wheel the other way. Go ahead, Steve, all the way the other way. And we're gonna go ahead and blast these two and back and forth until I get it moving, probably a good 1/4 inch. Then I'll go back to the slide hammer and just finish pulling it out. All right, guys, as you can see, this is loose now. So the air hammer back and forth, we're able to bring the bolts out flush. I'm gonna throw the slide hammer back on here and see if we can't keep pulling it. If not, we gotta continue the air hammer process until it gets to the point where it's nice and loose. But we made progress, and that's a good thing, because these things suck. All right, I'm gonna get my flashlight and I'll show you guys how much of a gap we got. As you can see, hopefully you see, it's pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and gamble it, take these bolts all the way out, and then finish it off with a slide hammer, and I think it's gonna come. I hope. All right, so here we go. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we won. So typically you want to like unplug this first. You don't just stand here like me holding it and wait for Steve to come over. But otherwise it works. So some back and forth, some combinations. We got the old one free. I'll give you a better view of it in a second here. Yeah, Steve's wrestling with my slide hammer. As you can see, our wheel speed sensor wire came unplugged, no problem. We'll get this here off and I'll show you. And again, this is on a Nissan Titan, but this application is basically the same on any like 4-wheel drive or a lot of your front wheel drive vehicles. The procedure is exactly the same. Where you're gonna find the battle is taking the wheel bearing assembly out of the vehicle itself. That's where usually you're gonna struggle and fight. You know. All right, so it's hard to see it in the camera, but if you listen, you could probably hear it. You can hear the bearing, the play in the bearing. And when you put the rotor on and then the wheel on, that just exaggerates that much more. And these are non-adjustable and they shouldn't have any play in them. Some of the signs you're gonna get are growling. When you turn the wheel or going around the corner, you may get some growling out of the bearing, and then naturally you're gonna get play on the bearing. So this is a wheel speed sensor that you may have to replace. Ours, I believe, came with a new one, so that is good. And while Steve's grabbing the new part, what we're gonna do is clean this flange up and then clean up in here. This is where they get stuck. So we're gonna clean this up real good, and when we slide the new one in, we're gonna put some anti-seize here and anti-seize on the splines. So if and when he has to ever change this again, it's gonna make the next guy way easier as far as it coming apart. Here we go. We got the new one versus the old one, and you always wanna do a comparison. Oh yeah, that's got some good play. We got our wheel speed sensor that came with it, which is great. So that's a great comparison, and the fact that you know it'll fit. We got a 6-lug wheel. Our threads here are the same. So this in theory should go on no problem. We'll probably just double check the splines on it before I go ahead and lube everything up and slide that in. But otherwise, there's the part. That's actually a Napa part, Napa Pro Line series, I believe. So we're gonna get this put in for him. All right, we got all the surfaces all cleaned up now, so we're gonna go ahead and add some anti-seize to here, and really mainly on the inner section here, a little bit on the splines, and then everything's gonna go back together, and we'll get this thing tightened up and torqued down. Without further ado, Steve. Ta-da!
Found a job good for me.
Yep, he may not get fired from doing this.
Yay!
All right, so it's really nice that it does come with the new wheel speed sensor. That makes your life way easier, because honestly, getting the plastic out of the old ones, it doesn't happen. So these is all lubed up. Now make sure this gets oriented the same way, and don't forget your dust shield, because, well, I've done that and almost just did it again. So you mind tossing that on there, bud? Oh, again, don't forget your dust shield, and then orient this the way it came off. You can still spin this, don't forget. So you got it in the splines, and then you're gonna go ahead and slide it in the hole, hopefully. Come down a little bit with your dust shield. There you go. And there we go. Like that.
Money.
And then you go ahead and get your bolts started and everything torqued down. So as you can see, getting it back together, it goes way easier than taking it apart. And then for the next guy, granted, this may last a long time, but at least it'll come apart easier for them. I'm gonna reshoot that little bit of a clip. I think it's right there. Because the camera was facing down, in case you didn't get it. But that went in no problem, slid right in. We're gonna go ahead and get the bolts in there. Taking it apart next time in the future is gonna go way better, because everything's been anti-seized. And then we don't forget, you're gonna route your ABS wire back up where it came from and get that plugged in. And then we're gonna go ahead and get the bearing assembly torqued down, the axle nut torqued down, and then the rotor, and then the whole brake assembly caliper itself. All right, so axle nut torqued, the wheel bearing assembly bolts tightened and torqued down, the new wheel speed sensor wire routed and plugged back in. Caliper's still out of the way. Steve's throwing a new Carter pin in there. Double teaming this thing now.
Yeah.
So that is good and on there. Woo, shiny parts. And then now we're gonna take the rotor, slide the rotor on, and then slide our caliper back on, and then put our two caliper bolts back in here, and torque those down, and this thing is back and ready to roll. However, we gotta do the entire oil undercoating job on it now. So another thing you can do is when you have a rotor, you want it to stay put where you know what I'm saying? You want it to stay put. You can run your, these aren't gonna be long enough. Oh, they are. So that kind of holds it in place as well while you slide your caliper on as well. So instead of it falling and getting all weird on you, you can go ahead and throw a lug nut on there, and that helps. Right, so everything's back together. Give everything a double check. Make sure your ABS or your wheel speed sensor's plugged back in. Your rotor's clean. You go ahead and give the brake a couple of pumps, because you might have opened up the pads. Excuse me. Then you're gonna go ahead and put your wheel on and get that torqued on, and then you're done. So not a horrible job. You could driveway do this with some basic tools. Some additional tools like the slide hammer and an air hammer make things world easier. You may get lucky if it's been done before and somebody anti-seized it, and then things will come apart nicely. All right, guys, that's going to bring us to the end of this episode where we took this 2014 Nissan Titan and went ahead and replaced the sealed wheel bearing hub assembly on it. And again, it was on the Nissan Titan, but the principle is the same with removing the caliper, taking the rotor off, taking the axle nut off, driving, and different techniques on getting that bearing assembly out, because that's where the sticking point's going to be. So it's nice to have a slide hammer and an air hammer on hand. But anyway, thanks for watching. Drop a comment and let us know what you want to see or don't want to see, but hold those comments. Anyway, Scott and Steve, Flip and Customize. Take care, guys.